The Department of Homeland Security and Secret Service are reportedly investigating James Comey after the former FBI director posted what some say is a threat against President Trump on Instagram.
Comey posted a picture of what he called a cool shell formation. It's right here. The shells, obviously, you can see are in the shape of an 8, 6, and 4, and a 7. So 86 can be a slang term for getting rid of. And Trump is the 47th president. So after backlash, Comey removed the post, saying that he was unaware the numbers were associated with violence.
The Queen City News chief legal analyst Khalif Rhodes joins us now to talk about the investigation and the possible consequences for a post like this. Khalif?
I'm not sure where to go with this. I mean, at the end of the day, obviously the original response is communicating threats, right? That's what you're assuming. But for you to be able to prove that a person, or I should say convict a person of communicating threats, it's the willingly or knowingly that I'm making a threat. And so Comey, in his response was, I posted a post earlier of a picture of shells I saw, which I assume were a political message. So he realized that portion. But I didn't realize some folks associated those numbers with violence. So that willingly and knowingly with intent to threaten a person would easily be out of the door. This is a specific intent crime. Some crimes are not specific intent. You can be charged with it even though you had no intention of doing it. This is one that you have to have this specific intent. And I mean, I think there is legitimate outrage where things are happening, where we're having threats to both sides of the aisle. On the left side, Pelosi, her family, her husband being attacked in their home. I mean, that happened. You had the multiple death threats and the multiple attempts on President Trump when he was running. And so you have these situations where violence is being normalized when it shouldn't be. But this, I think, is really something that's not a threat, and the depths and the reach that the folks on the right are going to make this seem like this was a legitimate threat is laughable at best. I mean, this is the former director of the FBI. He's not talking about killing the president of the United States. I mean, I think he'd be a little bit smarter about trying to do that. Probably a bad joke, not in right good taste, but not communicating threats.
I was going to say the line between, a joke maybe or something that could actually be credible. But is this because he is a high-ranking public official or former official? Whereas, if some Joe Schmo were to post something similar, would we even be having this conversation?
I think if there was intent there, yes, I think a Joe Schmo would have the same not media attention, but the same attention of the investigating agencies. The Secret Service would still be looking. But I think you want to say, is it a verifiable threat? Do they have an ability to complete this threat? Does the person that is being threatened genuinely believe this is an attack on my life? Those are normally the standards that you're talking about when you're saying communicating threat. If I'm threatening to beat you up, but I'm in LA and you're in Chicago, well, there's no really realistic opportunity for me to do that. Unless now I'm getting on a flight and then I land in Chicago. Okay, now that threat turns into something that could actually happen. But so those are the types of things that you would be looking at if they're investigating agency. But with the things where I'm talking about where we're going out of control with is where you have Kristi Noem saying, well, we'll investigate this to the fullest and ensure that the appropriate response. The appropriate response is letting Secret Service and anyone else ensure that this is not a real threat and to make sure that this investigation is conducted not in the court of public opinion, not on social media, but actually in the investigatory process like it should go.
And legal threats and threats really against presidents, any political figure, these have been pretty well litigated. I mean, all the way up to the Supreme Court back in '69. And in that case, we heard that justices making exceptions, showing that if there's hyperbole, right? I believe it was a political rally that some figures were talking about in a political sense, not necessarily in a violent sense.
100%, because one of the things Annie mentioned earlier was about this line, and the really only line that you have here is the line of First Amendment. So and the court wants to really, really protect and be mindful of, I don't want to infringe on your First Amendment rights for things that you have an opportunity, a protected right to say. You don't have a protected right to threaten someone. So now we have to examine, well, is this a real threat? Or am I just speaking? Is it hyperbole? Am I just talking about, metaphorically, I wish someone would get rid of them? 86 in my mind is get rid of it, not kill it. Like you've heard it in the restaurant. 86, right. That dish, they don't need it anymore. They're not talking about assassinate the dish. They're saying get the dish off the table because we want to get something else there. And I think Comey said this while he's saying, I recognize it's political. Get rid of 47. We need to get another person in office, not get rid of him like it's a mafia hit.
Right.
I think that's a little bit of a stretch, and I don't even think you have to have a really good attorney arguing if it got to that point. I think the investigation, once they go there, they would say, hey, this is something that it wasn't a real threat. I mean, and then if we're looking at one other thing, when I originally saw the picture, I was like, well, this is even real. Like, cause the 8 part, I'm thinking it was AI generated, cause it's like, it's red. I'm like, they got 8 red seashells and all the rest of them were different. I mean, but I'm glad he owned up to it, at least to say, look, I did this was in bad taste, shouldn't have done it, but now hopefully we can move forward.
Yeah, interesting. And of course, as we know, legislation is retroactive. So if there's going to be something written up about social media posts from elected officials or from public figures, I should say. So we'll see. Khalif, thank you.